In terms of what you need to film, such as A-roll or B-roll, it's really important when making a cinematic travel video, a travel vlog, that you do remember to do the A-roll. There's so much focus now on B-roll and just how to make your shots look cool, but A-roll is super important. Hey, what's up guys? My name is Thomas and today we're going to be talking about travel filmmaking. I got started out making videos in my garden when I was a teenager. The fact that I could kind of make people feel emotions and make people be super enthralled in my videos was just endless inspiration for, oh wow, what could I do next? From there I went to London and basically got involved in corporate videos. I decided to try and make a living with this. I found myself becoming way more passionate about the trips that I was going on. In between these corporate jobs, I would be going with friends to Croatia, saving up money so I could travel and going to all these amazing places, and I'd always be bringing my camera gear with me. And I started making these travel videos. And naturally putting them on YouTube, I got people starting to comment saying, wow, these travel videos look pretty awesome. They're not just because I was a filmmaker, obviously. They're not just the typical filming with a GoPro and having a load of shaky footage. They actually kind of had a cinematic feel to them. And this was back in the day when there weren't too many of these kind of videos out there on YouTube. And so I started getting comments asking me for tips and tutorials, and that's exactly what I did. And from there, with those travel videos and those tutorials, I eventually grew my YouTube channel to where it is now and had the amazing opportunity to be able to work with brands all over the world. I guess what differentiates travel filmmaking and travel cinematography in specific is not obviously just the fact that it is in exotic locations and that the filmmaker himself is traveling. It has started to evolve and have a certain aesthetic around it. I kind of see it as if all these different genres of filmmaking, as if they were genres of music. And so I kind of see travel filmmaking as if it was, for example, electronic music. But within travel filmmaking, there's loads of different styles of travel videos. And so I could kind of break them down as if they were, one of them was like EDM, another one was house, another one was dubstep, another one was like chill, lo-fi beats. And so within travel filmmaking, there are these, funnily enough, often relating to different genres of electronic music, but that's a side note. There's often these different types of travel videos. So there might be one that it's kind of become known as the Sam Calder travel video, which he kind of more or less pioneered along with some other creatives from back in the day, like Jay Alvarez and other of these kind of more like influencer travel filmmakers. And they would often involve big, epic travel videos with lots of backflips, lots of these kind of extreme sports activities, often to like a really emotive, moving, electronic pop kind of track. And it was all about the lifestyle as well as the cinematic ability. And that's kind of become known as one specific genre. And then there's other genres such as you can have these more kind of cultural immersive videos. Some people call these flow filmmaking that have become quite specific to travel videos, where you get people like Brandon Lee doing these kind of videos, which is where they'll kind of try and take you on a more cultural journey, and they'll really spend a lot of time filming the people from wherever they are, filming the food, and they'll try and really activate your senses and use a lot of transitions to kind of immerse you within this cultural experience and try and get you as if you were kind of there looking around at all. For example, you're in a market in India and you have all these spices and smells and flavors and all these different colors and faces. And if you imagine a filmmaker making a video about that, it had this kind of immersive feel to it where everything's kind of flowing together. Then you have other travel videos, GoPro ones, for example. So it's like the GoPro travel video. A lot of these are kind of 360 selfies where it's just like one big long 360 selfie and nothing's changing apart from the location where the person is. So what I'm trying to say is that within the travel video, travel cinematography, there's so many different types of travel video that filmmakers can make, which often provides endless inspiration for the filmmaker himself. There are a number of different ways to achieve that cinematic look within your travel videos. Now, there are so many ways I can't cover them all, but But the first I'd like to talk about is composition. I say this because it's one of the things that beginners get wrong the most, which is they don't frame their shots in any purposeful way. They will just point and shoot. So instead of just pointing and shooting, if they, for example, line their subjects up on the rule of thirds, or for example, if they reduce the amount of headroom above a subject's head, or maybe they use leading lines to create an aesthetic shot of a landscape, or they use, for example, foreground and background elements to create this kind of depth within their shot. All of these things, either singularly or combined, can start achieving a cinematic look in your travel videos. Another thing that people are often using now is movement and having camera movement. So either using gimbals or a lot of the time, like I do, using handheld camera movements in a way that almost replicates gimbal movements. You can really start to achieve a Hollywood look on a budget with a really run and gun filmmaking style. So just by integrating some of these cinematic movements, such as a pushing forward movement into a landscape shot, can completely transform that shot from something static that almost looks like a photo, or something, as another mistake, something that might be kind of shaky and hard to watch, to something that is smooth, dolly-like, and it really looks like it has been made with a budget and it really draws the audience in. It's quite helpful to think of all of these rules and techniques on how to get that cinematic look in your travel video as trying to boost the production value of your travel video. So you've got to kind of think about, how can I almost trick my audience into thinking that this was made by an award-winning production team with all the gear in the world, when in reality it was most likely filmed by you with only a couple of cameras and maybe a drone. So this is a really interesting way to think about it, because you're constantly using these techniques such as you're really trying to think about amazing composition, combining that with a really well thought out and purposeful camera movement. Or for example, you have a little drone with you and you're flying that up in the air and getting shots that, until 5 years ago, people only thought that was possible with helicopters. Once you're doing these things, then people will really start to get this cinematic vibe from your video. As I mentioned before, I started out growing my audience by, at the same time as posting travel videos themselves, I was also posting tutorials, tips and techniques that were going to help other travel filmmakers make the same kind of videos as I was. Now, this isn't the only way to do it, although it can really help shortcut your way to having an audience on YouTube. The problem with this approach potentially is that you do get seen more as a teacher versus an actual filmmaker yourself, and it really is a balance in trying to find your identity as somebody who actually makes films versus somebody who simply teaches and sometimes makes films. This is kind of this conflict that a lot of artistic people have, in that they know that by teaching they can fund their own adventures and their own art. However, they don't want to teach too much or be seen too much as a teacher, because then they'll lose their identity as an actual filmmaker. So that was a bit of a side tangent, but it is important to consider this when you are starting out your own travel filmmaking journey, as often what can happen is that you are just seen as a teacher. Another thing that I would really recommend, especially when you're starting out growing a YouTube channel, is to just be consistent for a period of time. You're very likely not to see a large amount of traction in the first even year, which kind of sounds unmotivating and painful, but it is worth it if you really want this. And so you've kind of got to be expected to write off, 6 months without really seeing much traction at all before you really start gaining some ground and gaining a lot of subscribers. So you really do have to enjoy the process and get excited about the videos that you're making. It's kind of a bit of like a mental thing to be trying to make your best ever videos and almost knowing that they're not going to be seen by very many people, but you've got to do it, because otherwise if you don't make your best videos and just wait until you have an audience to then make your best videos, number one, you're not going to enjoy it because you're just going to be making average videos. And number two, you won't build that audience in the first place, because no one wants to watch average videos either. You got to think about yourself as a subscriber. Who do you want to subscribe to? If you see a channel that's got 500 or 1,000 subscribers, you're only going to subscribe to them if their videos are amazing, right? Because they haven't got that social proof. And it's not very often that we as viewers will subscribe to people with small channels. We're usually looking for those big channels who are already proven and we already know that they're going to make awesome videos. But to support somebody with a small channel, we really have to see that, like, wow, this guy is like, or this girl is like really up and coming, and we really see that they have a spark and they're really putting out awesome stuff. That's when that we're going to subscribe. So don't make the mistake of saving your best videos until you have an audience. The way I go about the process of travel filmmaking myself is not planning too much, because I really want to see what happens during the trip. This has its pros and its cons. I do know some people who really plan everything out and they almost have the video in their mind before they even go to the place. They'll already have the locations prepped and everything. This is a more professional approach. However, you've really got to find that balance between traveling to make the film or traveling to travel and making a film along the way. I talk about this in a free training that I have on my website in more depth, but essentially the idea is that do you want to go on holiday to give your all and put your all into making a video, or do you want to go on holiday to enjoy yourself and then make a video on the side? It really is an important thing to be clear on. Otherwise, you're going to be somewhere in the middle and you're going to have, you're not going to be clear about, imagine you're lugging around a massive backpack full of gimbals and gear and cameras and drones, but then your intention actually is to just film it on the side. It doesn't make any sense. So you need to be kind of clear about what you actually want to do before going on that trip itself. However, the planning that I do is often about having a kind of a feel or a theme that I want to integrate in this video. So, for example, a couple of years back, I went to Uganda and made a travel series called the Uganda series that consisted of 4 videos that I made over 2 weeks. And I knew that it was going to be a very kind of rugged safari-like trip. And I knew the climax was going to be seeing the endangered mountain gorillas in Bwindi Park in the mountain jungle. And so I knew that was going to be like almost like mythical adventure. And personally, I've always wanted to see mountain gorillas ever since I was small. So I knew it was going to be one of like those life-changing trips for me. And so having that in mind, it kind of gave me a way to plan for that. I knew that I was going there to make videos. I knew I wasn't going on holiday. I was going there to make film. So I was full filmmaker mode. I didn't even like leave myself time to enjoy the holiday. I was just enjoying the process of making the film, and through that, obviously enjoying the experience as well. But I didn't take too many moments where I was like, let's just put everything aside and just watch. It was kind of enjoying this process of being creative and experiencing the world through my camera. And I think that's a great way to go about it, because you can really allow yourself to be aware of what's going on whilst making your video. Versus if you have everything planned out, you're kind of just following a checklist, which can be amazing when you're making other videos, such as a music video I just made for my own song, which I'm going to release really soon, which I'm really excited about. That was a very planned shoot, and I knew I only had a day, and I was filming in an apartment, and I knew exactly what shots I needed to get, and it was just, I already visioned everything in my mind, and all I needed to do was just tick off the shots as I got them, which was obviously very hard work, because you're getting like 200 shots in a day. But if I hadn't made that list, it would have been really chaotic. I wouldn't have known which shot was going where, and it would have been a complete mess. But when you're making a travel video and the story is developing as you go, it's a very different process. In terms of equipment, I kind of recommend like packs. So what I mean by that is, let's say you're making your first cinematic travel video. You can actually do that on your phone. Surprisingly, you can actually do that on a smartphone. So you might bring a smartphone, maybe a gimbal for that phone, maybe a couple of moment lenses, for example, and that could be your first ever cinematic travel video filmmaking gear. Fits in a very small backpack or even in your pocket, and you can have it wherever you go, and you can get some really, really awesome results for that as long as you know how to use it and you have the filmmaking knowledge to go behind that. So that's kind of like pack 1. Like pack 2 might be a basic DSLR such as the Canon M50. I used to use the old version of that, which I believe was the 550D or the Rebel T2i. I had like loads of different names for some reason back in the day. That's what I started on. I had a couple of different lenses, and you could also buy, for example, a gimbal or a glide cam, or just go handheld and maybe a Rode video mic. That might be setup number 2. Then you've got the more advanced setup, which is what I'm lucky enough to be rocking these days. And I've just bought the brand new Sony A7S III, which I've wanted for about 7 years, ever since the A7S II came out. And I haven't actually had the chance to go and film a proper travel video with it yet. I've just been shooting studio stuff like this and different things around Barcelona where I live at the moment. But I'm pretty confident that they have made the ultimate travel vlogging, cinematic travel video machine, because the autofocus is amazing for any time you're pointing the camera at yourself. The colors are amazing, so you don't have to have a nightmare color grading everything, plus 1,000 other things such as 4K, 120 frames per second, and a load of really awesome user functionality things that just make this camera so easy to use and so amazing in its cinematic output. Plus I already have a bunch of Sony lenses, so it just worked for me. So for example, what I'd be rocking at the moment is Sony A7S III with, I've got the 24-70 Sigma lens, 2.8 as my main lens. And this is really amazing because you can go pretty well. I wish it was 20-70, but I think that's almost impossible. So, I mean, at least with 2.8. So 24 is just about good enough for me in terms of wideness, and then 70 is fine in terms of how close I want to get. And that can basically do everything. And then if I really want to go fancy and cinematic, I've also got a 35mm, which goes down to 1.4, which is Samyang. I've also got a 14, 3.2, which is also Samyang. And more or less with that combination, I can do almost anything. One thing I would love to have when making a travel video is like a telephoto lens. I'd love to get something that goes up to 200, although obviously you're talking some pretty big size there, so I don't know how practical that would be in terms of lugging that all around in my backpack. But that's the gear that I use at the moment, and I'm absolutely loving it. I've also got the Xeon Crane 2S, which I love, and that's it. I don't currently own a drone. I've been lucky enough to travel with friends who've always had drones. So believe it or not, I've never actually flown a drone, being a cinematic travel filmmaker guy, which is pretty weird. Maybe I should, I don't know. There's only so many things you can do as a travel filmmaker, right? So I actually prefer not literally doing everything, because it kind of stresses me out and I can't focus on what I actually want to do, which is be on the ground telling the story. And if I can kind of work out a trip where I know I've got a friend who is going to be getting some awesome drone stuff, then for me it's just like, thank you, thank you, thank you, because I don't have to worry about that myself. So before I was breaking down to you the different styles of travel videos, and the one that I really love making at the moment is the cinematic vlog, or like the documentary vlog. It hasn't really got a proper name at the moment, but this is the style that I made my Uganda series in. And it involves a kind of blend between the cinematic travel filmmaking style, where you might be filming some kind of aspirational content, as well as blending in the more kind of rugged cultural style, where you're filming a lot of the stuff that's really going on around you, and you're getting a lot of this kind of sensory activating footage that really just shows the feeling of where you are, being on the ground and being in that place. And also mixing that in with a vlog, so it's the filmmaker myself talking to the camera and telling the story, which I think is really important. And also potentially mixing in interviews of friends or the people that you meet. And this style, I think, really creates something unique and something quite fresh and new, because it's not the typical vlog where you imagine just some guy chatting to the camera the whole time and not much else. And it's not just the visuals, where it can be really amazing to watch and really inspiring, but you actually come away with it thinking, kind of, what was the point in a way? Like what's the story? Like, what did I actually get out of that, other than just see a load of cool stuff? And so vlogging really brings in this opportunity to connect your viewers with the world where you are and actually tell a proper story that's full of excitement and conflict and drama and everything that story has. Because naturally travel always has all of that stuff in it. Whether it's something as stupid as missing your bus, you can actually make that into something really dramatic and kind of moving, and those low moments will make your higher moments, where you actually do finally arrive at the location, wherever it is. It'll make those moments like special and like wow, rather than just a highlight reel filled with a load of wow, if that makes sense. So in terms of what you need to film, such as A-roll or B-roll, it's really important when making a cinematic travel video, a travel vlog, that you do remember to do the A-roll. There's so much focus now on B-roll and just how to make your shots look cool, but A-roll is super important. And so in a travel vlog, you need to remember to talk to the camera. And this can be quite awkward, uncomfortable, and nerve-wracking a lot of the times. For example, if you're in a situation that is stressful and you're trying to capture you missing your bus, the last thing you want to do is be filming you missing your bus. You want to be trying to get on the bloody bus. You don't want to be filming yourself, which might actually make you miss the bus, right? But you've really got to remember to be filming in these moments, because that's what really makes a story pop. And also talking to the camera and telling the story when you're having those amazing moments. You know, there was a lot of moments where I was just, my eyes open, just for example, looking at some elephants just walk right in front of me, just wild out in the middle of Uganda, and kind of remembering to like hold, not even be looking at the camera, but like holding it so I'm filming my reaction as I'm watching these elephants, and trying to kind of have like 10% of my consciousness like more or less making sure everything's in focus and like kind of actually like the shot looks good and pointing at me whilst I'm just taking this in. So that is a really important thing to think about. And then from there, you've got to think about B-roll as backing up and supporting and filling in between your vlogging part. So you've got to think about your B-roll as if you're saying something, you've got to think, okay, I've just talked about this, I need to get the B-roll of this as this. Or maybe you filmed a certain section in the B-roll and you think, right, now I need to talk about that. So the B-roll and the A-roll are constantly supporting each other. And then you might say, okay, now we're gonna go from the car to the lake, right? And so sometimes you can just be like, hey, all right, now we're at the lake. But it's a lot more interesting to then cut to a B-roll sequence where we see that transition. We see us going from the car to the lake, whatever that looks like. There are a number of different ways to achieve that cinematic look within your travel videos. Composition. I say this because it's one of the things that beginners get wrong the most, which is they don't frame their shots in any purposeful way. Instead of just pointing and shooting, if they, for example, line their subjects up on the rule of thirds, or for example, if they reduce the amount of headroom above a subject's head, or maybe they use leading lines to create an aesthetic shot of a landscape, or they use, for example, foreground and background elements to create this kind of depth within their shot. Another thing that people are often using now is movement and having camera movement. So either using gimbals, or a lot of the time, like I do, using handheld camera movements in a way that almost replicates gimbal movements. You can really start to achieve a Hollywood look on a budget with a really run and gun filmmaking style. However, you've really got to find that balance between traveling to make the film or traveling to travel and making a film along the way. Don't make the mistake of saving your best videos until you have an audience. There's so much focus now on B-roll and just how to make your shots look cool, but A-roll is super important. And so in a travel vlog, you need to remember to talk to the camera. Thank you so much for watching. You can check out my work on my YouTube channel, which is Thomas Alex Norman. You can check out my music YouTube channel, which is Tom Norman Music. And you can also check out my filmmaking program, which is called the Life Capture Academy. And you can find that at lifecaptureacademy.com. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, keep filming. Bye-bye.